Okay. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. John the Morgile here, checking in for another section of the audiobook, Worlds Beyond the Poles by Amadeo Giannini. This is going to be section 5 of the recording and chapter 6 of the book. So we will get into it here in just a moment. Let me make sure that we are live, loud, and clear. Looks like the stream has started indeed. So do me a favor and throw a big old thumbs up in the chat if you can see and hear me okay. And we'll get started in just a moment. And of course, the disclaimer is the views and opinions expressed in this work are not necessarily my personal views and opinions, but it's definitely interesting. I can't say that I necessarily agree with the way that the author asserts certain things that, as far as I can tell, haven't really been proven. It's a lot of speculation presented as fact. But maybe he knows something I don't know. But again, I think it's interesting. And I had a few people request that I do this, and I've never read it personally, so we'll get right into it. Don't forget to share these works on social media, and if you guys want to help the channel effort, it would certainly be appreciated. Links are below. As some of you know, I am fully homeless, trying to transition into a more permanent living situation. Doing the hotel thing is extremely expensive, and we're just teetering on being out in the street. So it's a difficult time, hopefully towards the end of this chapter, but it is rough. So much love and appreciation to those of you out there that chip in a little bit and help out. It really goes a long way. Love you guys very much. And let's get into it. Chapter 6 of Worlds Beyond the Poles. This chapter is subtitled A Journey Over the Earth's Skylight Road of Illusions. Almost sounds like a hidden Mario Kart level, doesn't it? The lens is the culprit, and the deception is the crime. By the way, on the thumbnail of this video is figure 4 from the book. So when he mentions figure 4, it's right there on the thumbnail of this video. Figure 4 is reproduced from the 1930 original released to the science editors of press syndicates in New York City. It is intended to show lens deceptions experienced in all observations of the Earth's luminous outer sky surface from stratosphere darkness and from other land areas of the universe. It was also intended to indicate the lens deceptions resulting from telescopic observation of luminous celestial areas. Though the drawing was made prior to any confirming photographs of stratosphere ascension or rocket flights, it may now be viewed as reality because of the V2 rocket photographic confirmation since October 1946. And as I mentioned before, I have done a video covering that very V2 rocket launch that they keep mentioning in this book, and as far as I can tell, that was faked footage, but I'll try to remember to put a link to that in the description of these, because it was pretty wild anyway. One, the land area as indicated at the bottom of the drawing represents the accustomed location in our observation of the familiar blue sky between New York City and Chicago. in looking up or out from such land positions or from any other land position of the Earth, we observe the blue sky of varying depth or density from time to time and from place to place. 2, the sharp horizontal curves are never experienced with such sharp angles. The abrupt termination of the horizon is here required to complete the illustration. It imposes lines of demarcation between the various land communities. It also permits simultaneous view of inner and outer sky curvature. The outer are to be observed only from stratosphere darkness and from other land areas of the universe. 3, the region between represents the 7 to 10 mile distance from land to blue sky. The distance varies over the Earth and over the universe whole. Inhabitants of other land areas of the universe can view no other blue sky than their own. They cannot see our immediate blue sky, but they do see our outer sky surface as we see their outer sky surface. At night, they view our sky's outer surface areas and every sky area as here depicted as luminous and deceptively globular. Hence, the deceptive globularity imposes the appearance of isolation. Accordingly, our terrestrial area appears to other inhabitants of the universe as the same isolated quote-unquote stars and planets as their areas appear to our observation. Our sky areas make their quote-unquote heavens above as their sky areas make our heavens above. 4, the dark areas of the illustration above, figure 4, the sky area, 4, the total area of the illustration above the sky areas represent the stratosphere, which extends indefinitely. As it encroaches upon the terrestrial sky areas, it likewise exists over all sky areas of the universe. 5, the luminous and disk-like outer sky areas show how the gaseous blue sky of terrestrial land observation becomes luminous against the dark stratosphere. The lens detecting such luminous areas, which we definitely know are not globular and isolated, is compelled by its function to create the curves that produce the luminous disk areas as illustrated. Each disk area must, as previously explained, impose that further illusion of a body. The celestial, quote, bodies of astronomy are precisely what the illustration describes. Hence, from a distance, we see the illustration's luminous disk-like areas as true disk surfaces. Likewise, do we observe luminous celestial sky surface areas, the so-called stars and the planets of astronomical assumption. And inhabitants of celestial land areas view luminous areas of our sky in precisely the same manner as we observe luminous areas of their sky. In sharing our lens illusions, as they must, then there's a line missing at the bottom here. There's just one line missing, sorry. Manner that we have been deprived of physical journey to their lands. Since the drawing could have no purpose of the complete discs were shown. Since the drawing could have no purpose if the complete discs were shown, it portrays only half discs or a series of luminous arcs. That is all that is really required, inasmuch as that alone is what the most powerful telescopes are able to detect throughout the universe. If the lower blue sky areas of the illustration were obscured, as one held the illustration at arm's length and observed from the top of the page, one would discern that any area shown would appear as a disk from distant observation. As explained earlier, when that deceptive lens-formed disk area is detected, the mind automatically supplies the fullness, which completes the disk and imposes the illusion of a globe body. Every luminous outer sky area of the Earth and the universe about the Earth must, through lens function and only thereby, be detected as a disk-like area illustratively presented, and it is then assumed to be a globe, and the illusory globe must appear to be isolated. It should be understood that every luminous arc or disk-like area, as illustrated, possesses width as well as length. Since there are 9 luminous sky areas in the distance or length of stratosphere course from New York City to Chicago, each area should be considered approximately 111 miles in diameter, to make the approximate 1,000 miles between New York City and Chicago. It may be considered that in the flight machine photographing that sky course, there will be a lens of sufficient power to trace an area 111 miles wide. Accordingly, as this particular stratosphere journey to Chicago extends in north to northwesterly direction, there would be photographed 9 luminous, globular, and isolated bodies on the direct course. And photographs made at an angle to the direct course would show numerous other luminous, rounded, and isolated bodies, their number depending on stratosphere altitude and camera lens power, plus the photographing angle. The intensity of gaseous sky content prevailing at the time of photographing would likewise influence the number of bodies to be detected by the camera lens. The group arrangement of Figure 4 is intended to convey how every luminous terrestrial sky area would appear, but such necessary illustrative luminous sky areas to be separated or isolated as they appear from distant observation. It should be understood that when observed individually, the luminous curving down of each depicted sky area causes it deceptively to appear separated and isolated as a distinct unit or body. No lens can detect and record more than one of the luminous disk areas at any given time. That feature, as previously shown, was proven by the U.S. Navy's rocket camera photographs of luminous terrestrial sky areas over White Sands, New Mexico, and adjacent territory. As the illustration's 1,000-mile photographing experiment is in progress from New York City to Chicago, other similar experiments over the sky of corresponding 1,000-mile areas can be moving in the stratosphere from Los Angeles and from Montreal, London, Berlin, Moscow, and Rome. They would all be procuring identical photographs over their respective luminous sky areas. There could be variation in the quality and the quantity of light shading and distortion in some photographs over different sky areas. If the cameras of the different photographing expeditions possessed varying lens power, that would result in there being more or less luminous and isolated terrestrial sky area globes photographed over different routes. However, if the same lens power is utilized in all cameras over all routes, and if the same altitude is maintained, the photographic results will be approximately the same. The qualification, approximately, is in order because conditions prevailing at the time of photographing some 1,000-mile areas would vary with conditions prevailing elsewhere and with those of the 1,000-mile area from which the numerical standard was developed. gaseous condition of the various luminous sky areas could influence detection or mitigate against the possibility of detecting certain sky areas. The photographing angle would also contribute to numerical finding. Thus, at this point, one may have acquired some vague concept of the deceptive, isolated terrestrial universe that our luminous outer sky areas present to all observers from beyond the Earth. One needs but briefly consider the number of luminous isolated globes to be detected over a single 1,000-mile area of the Earth's entire luminous outer sky surface. Naturally, the number of isolated globes to be detected can be expected to vary depending upon lens power, restricting angles of lens focus, and conditions existing at various terrestrial sky areas. In the latter consideration, stratosphere elements and gaseous sky content and expression would be factors. It is reasonable to assume that a lens with greater power will embrace a wider terrestrial sky area than a weaker lens could. But the more powerful lens cannot detect as many isolated globes over a restricted sky area because of the fact that by embracing a larger sky area, there will be an overlapping of the more numerous areas to be detected by the weaker lens. Where the weaker lens might allow 20 or more isolated sky areas in 100 miles of sky surface, the stronger lens might be expected to detect only 10 or 12 or even fewer. However, the numbers here used are meaningless other than for comparison. No numerical accuracy is intended or required. The primary and broader purpose of the 1930 illustration was to express that all astronomical observations of so-called stellar areas are products of the inescapable lens deceptions which must be duplicated in every detail in telescopic observation and photography of luminous outer sky surface areas of the Earth. Realization of lens deceptions in the sky over our own backyard eloquently proves that telescopic observations of the celestial deal only with unrounded and connected celestial sky surface areas. And it is the individual concept which mistakenly bestows the status of globe on celestial sky surface areas after the detecting lens has provided the area with a dark appearance. There should be great need for stressing this factor after 300 years of mathematical astronomy, which, in detecting some and conjuring other luminous surface areas of the celestial sky, has developed the dictum extraordinary that the disk area of lens production is actually the globe which concept harbors. To avoid possibility of misunderstanding this paramount feature dealing with illusion and delusion, it may be further clarified as follows. The unreal globe, which was aired by the unreal disk, because the lens alone was responsible for the disk, is astronomically established as a factual entity in the world of things. Is it not astounding? Fortunately, current rocket camera photographs of luminous outer terrestrial sky surface areas make it possible for the first time in history to check and compare astronomical observations. That checking and comparing was denied to telescopic observation for many centuries, and it has since been denied to astronomy's hired assistants, telescopic photography, and spectroscopic analysis. However, it has now proved that the complete fantasy of isolated globes or spheres circling or ellipsing in space. Though the unprecedented opportunity for checking and comparing assumed conditions of celestial finding with factual conditions of terrestrial finding is now available to astronomy, it is questionable if the astronomical fraternity will take advantage of it. Quote, "We see only that which we want to see, and we believe no more than that which we want to believe," end quote. Hence, primed observations are as dubious as spies. Nevertheless, though primed observations may be known to be so untrustworthy, such primed observations are retained as companions because that seems to be the easiest course. To reject them would impose an effort and a responsibility. Since rocket camera photographs have established that the deceptions of lens function are inescapable, it follows that once the telescopic finding is accepted at its face value, deducing robots instead of human astronomers may as well check the lens findings. What the astronomers may interpret of the telescopic photographic plates becomes entirely irrelevant if the lens error reproduced on the plates is accepted as a fact. Alas, the astronomer seems to be painfully reluctant to admit that proof of the error is at hand. It is pertinent to explain that the identical spectrum variations of celestial analysis will be found to apply to luminous outer surface sky areas of the Earth. The same misinterpretation of values will ensue, and with realization of the terrestrial sky area's factual values, the misinterpretation of celestial values should become manifest. Though terrestrial sky areas are known to be continuous and holding their allotted place in the universe structure, their billowing or fluctuating within the cosmic area of their original construction and placement will be accredited of their original of the same fantastic motions astronomically prescribed for the so-called stars and planets of celestial sky areas. When terrestrial sky areas are analyzed from the same distance and with the same astronomical equipment, their gaseous content and movement will produce all that which celestial sky gas produces for spectrum analysis of terrestrial astronomers. However, from our celestial observatory, we would not dream of interpreting the spectrum recordings as astronomers now interpret the recordings from celestial sky areas. With knowledge of our terrestrial sky, we would know better. Thus, returning to the illustrative 1,000-mile course of terrestrial skylight illusions, we find that the stratosphere journey from New York City to Chicago at an altitude of 100 miles or more must develop the following observational and photographic conclusions. The deceptively globular and isolated luminous sky areas would require seeing the planet of New York City. Then, in the order designated, there would be seen the star of Albany and the planets or stars of Utica, Syracuse, Rochester, and Buffalo. Then, at an angle from the main line of perpendicular observation over the cities of New York State, would be observed the so-called Star of Erie, Pennsylvania. As the course continued towards Chicago, there the planets of Cleveland and Detroit would loom. Other vague star scatterings would be observable in all directions. All directions away from the direct course being photographed on the perpendicular. Every 1,000-mile area of the luminous terrestrial sky would present the same deceptive appearance, and the sky areas would show corresponding celestial sky variations of luminosity due to variations of the chemical content and gaseous activity of the respective terrestrial sky areas. Though this may be repetitious, you think, it should here be explained that the familiar blue sky's varying depth or blueness, observable from time to time and from place to place at the same time, actuates variation of the outer sky's luminosity. The following feature also serves as an agent for the lens-developed illusions of record. The torrid equatorial and the frigid Arctic and Antarctic sky areas would be shown to possess marked difference in the depth of their luminosity when compared with the luminosity of the temperate zone sky areas. That would mean very little if the universe whole contained but one torrid and two frigid zones as now known at terrestrial level. However, the zones of the terrestrial are duplicated over and over again throughout the universe as a whole. That factor influences difference in light waves and colors now registered from luminous sky areas of the celestial, which are otherwise of the same composition. Corresponding differences for corresponding reasons would be shown to develop from terrestrial sky areas. Were we to increase the 100-mile altitude to, say, 5,000 miles, the sky area of the illustration's course from New York City to Chicago would loom as a wide layer of quote-unquote stars. Then, as our telescope was adjusted at an angle for observation of the sky territory northeast of New York City, there would be detected sky area stars of Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. The number of stars, star clusters, and double stars to be detected over that sky area would depend on lens power and other conditions previously described. The extent of our stratosphere search for terrestrial sky stars could continue over the Atlantic Ocean beyond Boston. Stars detected at such points would represent the rim of the terrestrial stars area first detected at New York City, and detection of, quote, stars would not be restricted to a direct eastern area, as it embraced the area from New York City to Boston in an easterly direction. It would also embrace a wide area in a northerly direction to the Canadian border and south to the Gulf of Mexico. Under telescopic observation, some sky areas would become vaguer, while others of the same area would be more luminous. The more luminous might appear at the Atlantic Ocean rim, and the vaguest might be detected in nearby Connecticut. Other skylight areas would appear so vague as to make for the determination that no sky luminosity, and therefore no sky, existed at such points. The detection of sky luminosity, celestial and terrestrial, does not depend solely upon distance from the observing point. North, east, south, and west, northeast, south, and west, our terrestrial skylight would reproduce that which is presented by celestial light. The extent of our view of the earth, skies, heavens above would depend on the angle of observation in the stratosphere, the power of the detecting lens, and the gaseous condition of the most remote sky areas at the time of observation. The altitudes of 1,000 to 5,000 miles in the stratosphere, the most powerful telescopic lenses, and their companion camera lenses would likewise record all the grotesque entities presently recorded of the luminous outer sky surface areas over the land of other parts of the universe. Such recording would be of sky areas over the known land of New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts, as well as over the water of the Atlantic Ocean. Hence, they could readily be determined as the illusory condition considered to be real when the same entities are observed over celestial land areas. The astronomically recorded Horse's Head in the Great Nebula in Orion and the spiral nebulae in Cygnus would be reproduced in certain terrestrial sky areas where the play of sky gases plus lens magnification would develop such gaseous formations. And if the light distortion appearing as a dark form in the terrestrial sky area was not defined as Horse's Head in the celestial skylight of astronomy's Orion, it could readily be designated something else related to horse anatomy. Be a horse's ass? I don't know. Such designation would not obscure the fact that it is nothing but skylight distortion. That which applies to the dark formation in luminous sky area likewise applies to the white formation in the astronomical nebula of Cygnus. Excuse me. The ectoplasm-like white veil or film of the Cygnus skylight area will be duplicated in terrestrial skylight. It may be found to develop in the skylight, making the stars of Portland, Old Orchard, and Kennebec, Maine. Or it could as readily be observed in the terrestrial skylight star of Kalamazoo, Michigan. That sky gas condition, which astronomy is pleased to describe as the Nebula of Cygnus, has already been photographed in the luminous terrestrial sky over White Sands, New Mexico. And it could be reproduced in ever so many terrestrial sky areas under conditions favorable to its formation. Another interesting observation from the hallowed realm of astronomical deduction is that dealing with the nebula M31 in Andromeda. Though it is conveniently mathematized as being 3,500 million times the weight of the sun, it can be readily dissipated under lens magnification. This expresses the ultimate of abstraction in the application of abstract mathematics. Despite such estimated sky gas weight, a telescopic lens can dissipate the so-called nebula formation. Yet the lens cannot penetrate through the gas density to the underlying lands. The depth of abstraction becomes evident as one realizes that there cannot possibly be an authentic gauge for the sun's mass, and any weight estimated is absurd. I agree with the author there. Though it fits the universe of illusion, it can have no application to the universe of reality. It is comparable to an estimate concerning the birth and ancestry of God with a big G. One need not burden conceptual capacity in a forlorn attempt to determine the meaning of that figure 3,500 million times the weight of the sun. Regardless of how one cares to view the application of abstract mathematics and the real meaning of so-called nebula, the paramount fact remains that no sky gas motion, seeming or real, has any bearing whatever on the realistic connected land existing under all sky areas. For reasons abundantly disclosed, sky areas must be considered isolated. The art of astronomy, though impotent to penetrate the gaseous celestial sky envelope, regardless of what its density may be, is restricted to observation and analysis of luminous sky areas and the movement of their gases. And astronomy's failure to grant that, quote, nebula is an aspect of sky gas motion, fosters gross misinterpretation of cosmic values. Experimentation proves that in observation of light and luminous areas, there will at times be formed grotesque creations. At other times, the formations will be dissipated. It depends considerably on the angle of observation, the gaseous movement of the luminous areas at the time of observation, and the amount of magnification of light or luminous area. Microscopic observations clearly express such features, though there exists in microscopy a possibility of error which is infinitesimal in comparison with the unlimited possibilities for telescopy. Observations of a microscopic field establish that too much magnification of the field specimen will cause it to be obscured, whereas a different light quantity will distort the specimen. Hence, in a factual study of lens capriciousness, it is established that the important feature is not so much what is observed, but rather how and under what conditions observations are made. In spite of claims to the contrary, abstract mathematics and their competent mechanical aids and guides can in no way correct the structurally inherent lens culpability. Size and power of a lens has nothing to do with the error of lens principle. A 1,000-inch lens cannot eliminate the error, but it can and will magnify the error. From the enviable 1,000-mile observation point in the stratosphere, the heavens above would be observed everywhere and at every angle of observation. Every luminous outer sky area over the entire Earth, or as much of the Earth's sky that could be detected, would present a vista of the heavens above. The terrestrial appearance in no way differs from that of the celestial sky areas observed from the terrestrial. The rhythmic shift of light motion within some luminous outer sky areas of the terrestrial would also present the same characteristics under spectrum analysis as presently found in the light of celestial sky areas. And that corresponding activity would cause it to appear that the, quote, star of East St. Louis or some other terrestrial sky area would be burning up its terrestrial orbit at a devastating rate. And it would deceptively appear to be circling towards our observation point in the stratosphere. On the other hand, it might appear to be as rapidly receding from our position and away from its normal location. The appearance of approaching or receding would depend upon the intensity and motion of sky gases at the particular place when observation was made. Such condition would deceptively appear when, in fact, nothing was going anywhere, either towards or away from our stratosphere observation point. Some terrestrial sky areas would seem to flicker or to fluctuate. One second, y'all, sorry. Okay, sorry about that. To flicker or fluctuate. The motion of some areas would appear to be constant and therefore imperceptible as motion. The motion of others would appear to be variable. And the constancy or variability of terrestrial skylight motion would correspond to that recorded by the light curves from celestial skylight areas. However, with the physical knowledge possessed of our Earth's sky, no reasoning person could ever ascribe to such motions of terrestrial skylight that which astronomy interprets from identical motions in celestial skylight. Celestial and terrestrial sky luminosity and the motions of such light have a common heritage. They are of the same universe family. Further, one is as continuous with the other as the circulating blood of the human body, which actuates the left side as well as the right side, and thereby nourishes the entire body. Mathematical astronomy has not and will not detect that obvious continuity feature from lenses and figures. That feature, being of the universe of reality, was not entrusted to the uncertainty of abstract figures and symbols. Though such figures and symbols are endowed with precision and positiveness, the endowment applies to and benefits only the unreal mathematical universe. In analysis of light waves from various so-called star areas of the universe, at times two spectra are observed to move back and forth. They prescribe, or there is prescribed, a waving or undulating motion of the skylight under analysis. The astronomer's conclusion must be that such duality of motion presupposes dual entities in motion. He does not consider the motions attributable to sky gases. If he did, he would be empowered to consider many other features this book contains. Instead, when spectrographic examination confirms the dual motion, the astronomer must assume that confirmation has been had of two distinct entities or bodies, whereas in reality, all that the astronomer's eyes, the telescope and camera, the spectrum and the spectroscope have established is that dual motion is taking place in the celestial skylight area. It should be further noted that none of the observations and tests have anything to do with land areas of the universe underlying the skylight being tested. They are restricted to a determination of celestial skylight content and activity. They are impotent to deal with the land existent under the skylight. Though there is land under all celestial and terrestrial skylights, there is no body in motion, to say nothing of two separate bodies in motion. The ever-active sky gases are responsible for all detected motion. Other factors may influence the portrait of motion which the lens detects. They also influence the spectrum. Excuse me. Hence, it is nothing more formidable than the misinterpretation of sky gas motion, which leads to the conclusion of spectroscopic binaries or double stars, in this particular instance of celestial skylight analysis. Duality of gas motion can exist, but duality of bodies can never exist, for the reason that there are no celestial bodies to have motion. That particular astronomical feature was embraced by the original treatise Physical Continuum as early as 1927. There it was disclosed that every sky area of the Earth would, through the inundating motion of gaseous content, deceptively appear to be circling or revolving. That 1927 claim has application to the entire universe. It discounted astronomical interstellar space and the circling or ellipsing of assumed isolated bodies in restricted space orbits. Orbits are definitely not required for the motions of luminous sky gases over land areas that are connected throughout the universe and are not circling or ellipsing in space. Energy in motion is restricted to waves of varying length and intensity. All of modern enterprise establishes that feature of natural law. And the active sky gases of the terrestrial and the celestial conform to the principle of motion. What deceptively appears to be happening should be known as illusory by modern astronomers. Then they would be able to discount the seeming celestial conditions which perpetuate and enlarge upon the primary illusion developed by lens function. Another of the many extraordinary features of astro-mathematical confusion is that which grants so-called nebula centers composed of gas and then proceeds to mathematize that such gas is formative in the stratosphere as the nucleus of star matter. Such a wayward conclusion results from the fact that the central regions of some luminous celestial sky area under observation defy penetration and dissipation of their light by the most powerful lenses. Hence, such concentrated central points are mathematized and assumed to be something different and remote from the remainder of the sky area. This observation is one that brings mathematician astronomers to the doors of reason. But alas, they refuse to enter. Such observation should show that the substance deceptively appearing to be formative in the stratosphere and apparently alienated from the central luminous sky area is gas movement of the sky light area. In a case of this kind, the astronomer comes so close to the truth that it is painful to realize how his misconception of values demands that he adhere to the faulty premise and forsake the truth so glaringly presented. It seems that something pertaining here was mentioned about 2,000 years ago by the immortal master of parables, who pronounced, quote, "None are so blind as those who will not see." That intensification of skylight in some areas, celestial and terrestrial, is a very natural condition, and it is related to the following. As one looks at the massed luminous coals of a furnace fire, the fire's luminous area, with the exception of the center, may, under intent observation, be broken up into viewable formations. The center, in holding the concentrative force of the fire and emitting the greatest light, must defeat any effort to see it as other than a vast concentration of impenetrable light and heat, nor can its light be dissipated. If the observer of such a furnace fire were at sufficient distance, and if he had not had direct experience with such accumulation of heat and light, he would be compelled to conclude that the border areas of the fire concentration were different in substance and detached from the central area. Yet, composition of the central area would be no different than the fiery matter viewable at the extremities of such an intense luminous center. Every area would be continuous with the center. Nevertheless, astro-mathematical calculations develop the fallacy that the center luminosity, not amenable to lens deception, is of a different model and is isolated from the extremities of that same center. Actually, the central concentration of a luminous sky gas area bears the same relation to the remainder of the detected sky luminosity as the furnace fire center is related to the extremities of the fire accumulation. The problem is resolved as follows. The gas mass of average skylight is readily lens detected in star proportion, whereas extraordinary gas mass content prohibits lens dissipation of the skylight. Accordingly, there can be lens detection and star formation only of those parts of the luminous area having less concentration than the central area. Hence, the center invites the conclusion that it is a remote body. The entire area is a nebula. And in a universe of reality, any nebula is but an aspect of luminous sky gas and light manifested throughout the universe entire. The fascinating feature of skylight formations from sky gas motion becomes a double feature as we review the 1946 rocket camera's accomplishments. On that occasion, a corresponding cloud formation was photographed within the luminous sky area over White Sands, New Mexico. It was also erroneously claimed to be a formation in the stratosphere. Hence, if it were of stratosphere formation, the astronomer would have to consider it a nebula. Now, it may be seen that something is about to happen to the mathematical astronomer's abstract figures and symbols of distance. It is to be recalled that such a white cloud-like formation was developed at the feeble distance of 90 miles from the stratosphere photographing point. It should also be recalled that a nebula is the assumed mathematico-astronomical substance supposed to be observed only at vast distances and because of distance. It is supposed to be the stuff of which stars are made. Hence, stars are being made in our own backyard. Marvelous creation. Observe again how dangerously close astronomers come to the answer contained in lights of telescopic detection. Yet they will not see that the so-called nebula is part of celestial and terrestrial skylight, and that its detection anywhere is an expression of sky gas function. It matters little if the original claim concerning the stratosphere photograph is retracted. It holds that a white area of the photograph is a nebula in the stratosphere, and that the white patch was detached from the remainder of the photograph of terrestrial sky. The self-evident fact is that such a formation cannot possibly be considered remote from the remainder of a sky area photographed at a distance of only 90 miles. If it were remote, it would not have appeared as part of the photograph as it did. Whatever determination is made of that white patch in the luminous sky area over White Sands, it demands the discard of at least 50% of astro-mathematical deductions concerning the structure of the universe and what is taking place throughout the universe. What that U.S. Naval Research Bureau rocket camera developed cannot simultaneously be considered nebula and not nebula at the same time. It cannot represent something possible only at unfathomable distance and at the same time be proved to exist in terrestrial skylight less than 100 miles away from the photographing point. While such sky gas formations were concluded to exist only at assumed distance the mind cannot grasp, and while they were assumed to be celestial entities unrelated to terrestrial sky gas development, the astronomical conclusion that they were detached from the luminous celestial areas had to be accepted. Hence, they were undisputedly established as elements of the astronomer's so-called interstellar space, and with the assumption that they were contained in that space rather than in the detected celestial light, they were assumed to be building material for so-called stars. The singular feature of this immediate exposition is that the astronomer, by concluding that his so-called nebula is building material for stars, moves in a centuries-long course toward admission that physical continuity is a reality. But the astronomer does not know he has admitted it. If the astronomer's nebula builds stars, it is gas accumulation. And physical continuity shows how terrestrial and celestial sky gas accumulation must ever be considered stars and planets. However, the meeting of theory's abstract course with the course of reality here described would prove to be too ample for complicated astronomy. It should here be related that when the early universe interpreters prepared the foundation for the elaborate astronomical framework, they could in no way anticipate the rocket's development and its sensational performance. Its camera's stratosphere photographs have shattered considerable of the suppositive astronomical fabric. And as rocket camera photographs have been responsible for such magnificent accomplishment, they have brought the realistic celestial structure much closer to the terrestrial. They have also accentuated the pace of modern man's conquest of the universe about us. In the foregoing reference to lens penetration and dissipation of celestial skylight concentration, the word penetration implies only lens' ability to grasp such luminous area for the purpose of recording it. It is a case of penetrating into the luminous surface, but not through the light accumulation of any skylight area, celestial or terrestrial. No lens can be expected to penetrate through skylight at the abstruse distances conjured by astromathematics. So that last sentence again was, no lens can be expected to penetrate through skylight at the abstruse distances conjured by astromathematics. Particularly does such apply when it has been conclusively proven by the stratosphere ascensions of 1931 and 1935 and by rocket camera photographs since 1946 that skylight cannot be penetrated through at a distance of less than 1 mile in the first case and at 90 to 190 miles in the latter case. Hence, the necessarily oft-repeated description of lens function must hold. No telescopic lens can penetrate through celestial or terrestrial skylight and detect the underlying land. If lenses could so perform, and if their findings could thereafter penetrate certain interpreting substance, all the celestial problems would have been resolved when the first telescope was fashioned. This account of lens failure to penetrate through light presupposes an absence of the light-penetrating emulsion application to photography. If there is a medium applicable to telescopy, it represents a very recent development and is unknown to this writer. However, even with application of such a light-penetrating medium to the camera lens, the area photographed through light must be distorted, and use of the medium will be readily detected by evident distortion of land and foliage on the Earth's surface. The greatest boon to mankind, other than the secret of overcoming death, would be the invention which might permit telescopic observation of that which is under every light detected in the universe about us. Then this volume might not be necessary. In what might be considered a capitulation to reason, there is observed the measure of penetrating into, but not through, the celestial skylight surface astronomically designated Nebula M31 in Andromeda. That celestial skylight has already received some attention here. Though the land exists under such a skylight area, there can be no land consideration by astronomy, which deals only with the outer surface skylight. A much different story would be unfolded by astronomy if telescopic lenses could penetrate the celestial skylight, particularly at the distances supposed to be involved. At the aforementioned celestial skylight point, the mathematical astronomers estimate a nebula accumulation weighing 3,500 million times the sun's mathematized weight. If one dotes on figures, such figures should be impressive, even if no light or sun existed for the figures of comparison. As such colossal figures are presented, it is asserted that the nebula mass can be dissipated under lens magnification. However, in this instance, the manner of dissipation merits qualification. No area of sky gas is dispersed by a lens, but the fact of seeming dissipation is sufficient to establish that the telescopic lens detects nothing but luminous sky gas. This dissipation in no way implies penetration. It is but a superficial dissipation likened to the dissipation of an impenetrable fog bank experienced on the Earth's surface. Though the fog bank is not to be penetrated by the optic lens, its outer areas may in various manner be dissipated. If the fog bank could be dissipated at our will, it would not be impenetrable. If it could be dissipated in the true sense of the word, we could see beyond it. Therefore, we could not say the fog had been penetrated. The telescopic lens cannot and does not dissipate the sky gas to permit such penetration. Were such possible, the land underlying the sky gas could be detected. But since astronomical conclusions do not seem to approximate such reasoning, we will pursue astronomical deduction as the astronomer would have it. 1. This assumed nebula mass, which is really sky gas cloud over a celestial land area, is mathematized as being 3,500 million times the unknown sun's mass and weight, assumed to be known through the same abstract mathematical procedure. 2, and the light of such a nebula mass can be dissipated but not penetrated over a cosmic distance assumed to be only a feeble 900,000 light years. This impressive astronomical light year is the distance a ray of light is assumed to travel during the course of our known year of 365 days, while moving at the speed of 186,000 miles every second of that year. That yearly distance is a trivial 6 trillion miles. Now that single light year distance need only be multiplied by 900,000. Though one cannot possibly conceive a fraction of such a distance, one may now easily realize precisely how a telescope lens can detect and dissipate light existent at such distance. One may also have full realization why the lens cannot penetrate celestial skylight. Caution seems to dictate that one not attempt to visualize such distance or the manner whereby a telescope lens might detect and dissipate light over such an inconceivable distance, yet lack the power to penetrate it. Though there could be double, triple, or a trillion times such inconceivable distance to infinity, there is no lens created and none that could be created to detect light over a distance mathematized as a small fraction of 1 light year, to say nothing of 900,000 light years. Such distances do not exist for realistic entities in a world of reality. They exist only in and for the abstract universe of the abstract mathematician. Scientism, don't you love it? A ray of light is most factual. A telescope lens is a realistic entity in spite of its inherent error. And the established function of light ray and telescope lens prohibits the fantastic performance as mathematically prescribed. The prohibition is proved by the fact that a lens is compelled by its function to create curves in its detection of light. And rays of light are compelled by their function to wave and bend as the curve-producing lens seeks to detect them. The lens does not penetrate through 6 trillion miles of space before developing the curve, and the ray of light does not travel such distance without bending. The lone factor of lens curvature prohibits such telescope accomplishment, and the abstract determinations have been dictated through the control of abstract mathematics. They are sole arbiter of the situation, qualitative and quantitative. Uh, 864-315-7892. Text me up. Qualitative and quantitative. Were one competent to imagine a telescope lens of such construction as to eliminate lens curvature and thereby to permit lens penetration of boundless, inconceivable infinity, by what reasoning could it be known that inconceivable infinity had been penetrated to its limitless extent? Question mark. Were we to grant conceptual ability to retain, other than by mathematical symbol, a time-space end to infinity, what would we name that which would extend beyond the finite bounds of infinity? Regardless of designation, would it not constitute a continuance of infinity? The human mind, in wayward fashion, seeks to establish the end, though it must ever be denied knowledge of the beginning. The empty procedure is likened to a forlorn attempt to determine the Creator's creator. Therein, it would be found that when mind established a power behind and preceding the Creator, the mental process to establish the first cause to supersede the mind's designation of Creator's creator would develop into an endless and futile procedure, and mind in its quest would become lost. The ultimate of abstract astro-mathematical endeavor defeats the purpose of all educational advancement and modern scientific research. The endeavor reflects the immature wisdom of the child in a Sunday school class, where being told that God created the world was impelled to ask, well, who made God? Astro-mathematics rush headlong toward the elusive ends of the universe mathematically ordered. In so doing, they deny the universe of reality at hand. And in the denial, they demand that modern man relinquish his divine right to conquer and inhabit the resplendent universe about us. Like the child who should first seek to know God and his abundant manifestations close at hand, the astro-mathematician should first seek to know the meaning of something manifestations before attempting to find the end of the universe. Somehow there seems to be more glamorous There seems to be more glamour attacking the second course, and like most glamour, it is something and unproductive. It's blurry at the edges of the page here. I'm so sorry. No portion of the astronomical something dealing with the so-called nebula M31 in Andromeda has application to a universe of reality. As the astronomer presents it, the portrait is one which applies in its entirety by the unreal universe of abstract mathematics. The lack of realism in astromathematical conclusions may be understood from the following. If from the nearest celestial point from San Francisco, London, Rome, or some other terrestrial point, there was erected an astronomical observatory equipped with the identical mechanical equipment and astronomer deductions now applying to observations of the celestial, the conclusions to be reached in observations of the terrestrial would compare with present conclusions concerning the celestial. The distances estimated from that celestial observatory to luminous terrestrial area would have to allow for the space assumed to exist between apparently isolated areas of the terrestrial. The fictional space pattern now applicable to and influencing distant estimates for celestial areas would have identical application to the assumed interstellar space between apparently isolated terrestrial bodies. Never could the Earth territory of the universe be seen as a single unit in space, but only as a popular misconception has held. Lens curvature prohibits any such distant observation, and lens curvature demands that the Earth be seen as the multiple globular and isolated bodies deceptively arranged for the celestial. The absurdity of the astronomical estimate of the sky gas mass in that area the astronomer knows as Nebula M31 in Andromeda would be established by corresponding appearances in areas of the terrestrial sky. The apparent gas mass of at least one area of the Earth's entire luminous outer sky surface would be found to present the same appearance as the area known as Nebula M31 in Andromeda. And if its assumptive weight were to be compared with the sun's assumed mass, the figures applied to the Andromeda condition would hold equivalent application in the world of figures. Moreover, the inconceivable distances involved in the detection of the Andromeda skylight could be made to apply to known areas of the terrestrial sky only a few thousand miles away from the observation point. The factors heretofore described, particularly the assumptive space factor, would permit the most abstruse mathematics in description of distances. Were we to establish at a 10,000 mile stratosphere altitude an imaginary terrestrial skyline as the measuring base through our terrestrial skylight area, it would be considered to represent the terrestrial star area, conforming to Herschel's base formula for celestial skylight areas. There would thereby be formed a terrestrial galactic system agreeing with the present celestial galactic system of astronomical order. It would embrace terrestrial skylight areas to a mathematically designated extent in all directions away from the terrestrial galactic plane. Now, it must be understood that the distances presently recorded from the celestial galactic plane to the greatest extent of celestial skylight detection are purely attributes of mathematical formula. they are most unreal. Then, in applying the customary astronomical yardstick, the presently known and real distances from the terrestrial galactic plane to the most remote terrestrial skylight points would demand the identical abstruse distance consideration applicable to celestial skylight points determined beyond a given distance from the celestial galactic plane or line. Skylight points of a known 12,000-mile terrestrial sky area, representing 1/2 of the determined Earth's circumference, would have to be considered millions of miles away from the terrestrial dividing line and from the observing point only 10,000 miles away. Were observation made from the celestial moon point 300,000 miles away from the terrestrial, the most remote terrestrial skylight points from the terrestrial galactic plane would have to be any number of light years away from the observation point. That purely mathematical consideration for a mathematical universe would apply even though the most remote terrestrial skylight points were actually embraced by the Earth's known circumference of 24,000 miles. These absurd conclusions in application to the terrestrial conform to astronomical conclusions concerning the celestial. And the greatest contributor to that absurdity is the assumed space between all terrestrial skylight points detected from the terrestrial galactic plane to the most distant terrestrial horizons. Though we know the terrestrial sky is as continuous and spaceless as the underlying terrestrial land, the illusory space would be an important factor causing enlargement of distance to an incalculable extent. In conjunction with the terrestrial sky-space illusion, terrestrial skylight gas expansion and contraction, and skylight radiation, and the additional illusion it imposes would likewise contribute to an unreal distance pattern corresponding to that astronomically ordered for the celestial. The speed of light through the more realistic medium of infinity's perpetual darkness, as opposed to the speed of light assumed from man's artful but artificial experiments at sea level, is another factor. These and numerous other purely technical but extremely important elements are the influencing agents in compilation of astronomical data having no application whatever to the celestial of reality. Their influence extends to the terrestrial and the terrestrial sky's natural manifestations. They too must be misinterpreted through abandonment to the illusory. The celestial and terrestrial comparisons now prove to be of merit as a result of stratosphere ascensions and rocket flights are here afforded timely expression. They show the terrestrial skylight formations and deceptions already encountered in stratosphere photographs of luminous terrestrial countered in stratosphere photographs of luminous terrestrial sky areas. Such photographs attest to physical continuity no less than the land extent continuing beyond Theory's North Pole and South Pole ends of the Earth. One feature complements the other, and they jointly contribute to the development of a new and factual portrait of the universe about us. This little publicized radar portrait of a substantial area of the celestial sky also contributes to the universe portrait. And such features collectively establish beyond any doubt that the realistic pattern of the universe is diametrically opposed to that developed by astro-mathematical deductions of the centuries. If one finds it difficult to accept these physical continuity dictums in spite of physical proofs sustaining them, the following should be considered. In a child's mind may be fixed the deluding features of the fable of the stork. The child, lacking knowledge of procreation, must cling to the fascinating fable. The fable must prevail if the child's mind is not sufficiently developed to comprehend the meaning of reproduction, with its successive stages of cell transmission, fetus development, etc. The child's mind may even acquire the accepted terms descriptive of the birth. The child may be able to express the words sex, born, baby, growth, and etc. It may even witness the moment of a birth. Yet, as long as the immature mind is dominated by the image of a long-legged bird delivering babies, it may behold 1,000,000 babies and remain in ignorance of how they actually arrived. It's not storks, it's ibises. Everybody knows that. That child's mind differs not from the undeveloped adult mind. Though the adult mind certainly knows how babies are delivered, it can remain as closed as the child's mind concerning other features of life and of the universe. Something which concept does not hold is beyond the bounds of possibility for both child and adult. As it is with the child's mind, so it is with the astronomer's mind, which causes him to express the words curving, waving, bending, fluctuating, and undulating. They should afford ample knowledge that creative energy at work does not circle, and they should be a key for understanding that globes or spheres do not comprise the celestial or the terrestrial. Yet, despite the astronomer's broader observation and deeper calculations of luminous celestial sky gases in motion, he demands that unseen mass bodies be prescribing all motion and the wrong motion. The undeveloped child could be shown realistic pictures of baby delivery and, through domination of the fable, remain ignorant of the reality of the matter. So it is with the astronomer who, in viewing physical proof at hand of the fallacy of isolated bodies, persists in clinging to the star and planet fable. And he makes every effort to fit proofs culled from a world of reality into his world of illusions and scientism. The illusory must be preserved at any cost. It is the astronomer's truth. There is not a feature of telescopic observation and photography and of spectrum analysis considered applicable to the universe about us, which does not apply with equal force and volume corresponding tests of the Earth's outer luminous sky surface. Yet, modern enterprise has established that such absurd features are purely illusory, and they do not apply. All the fantastic entities assumed to exist throughout luminous celestial sky areas seem to exist in like observation and analysis of the constantly shifting gases of the Earth's sky. And it must never be forgotten that all observations, analysis, and resulting conclusions apply only to the sky gas energy of celestial and terrestrial skylight areas. There is no application whatsoever to the land under such skylight areas. The cosmic agency, which contributes to the many deceptive movements of the least luminous and the most luminous sky areas, is responsible for the light shifts, fluctuations, and undulations, and it thereby indirectly governs the resulting grotesque formations so deceiving to the observer. That cosmic agency and creative force beyond astronomy's embrace is cosmic ray activity. It is constantly bombarding every outer sky area of the entire universe. The rays have no directional pattern. They are not restricted to any course or channel in their ceaseless movement throughout the infinite realm of darkness of which our immediate stratosphere is a part. Sown by the master planter, they are strewn from the sun's impenetrable crater in a seeming helter-skelter. And in such apparent nonconformity to pattern, they establish the most profound creative pattern. Moving with immunity to man-made laws applied to the universe, they affiliate with receptive outer sky areas everywhere along the celestial and terrestrial course. They charge one sky area and supercharge another with their magnetic forces. As their force is concentrated on a particular sky area of the celestial or the terrestrial, there is developed within that sky area an unprecedented accentuation of customary motion, which befuddles distant observers. In other sky areas, and at the same time, the dispensation of that creative solar energy remains stable in a perfecting balance of the whole universe sky. But concentration of force upon one sky area exerts a measurable influence on neighboring sky areas. Hence, there is produced for the bewitching of mortal mind a unique series of motions within luminous sky areas under observation. But whether such motions are real or fancied, they are always motions of the sky. Never are they motions of the realistic land, which, though unseen, is always present under the skylight. Reason dictates that one does not erect a roof unless one is to have a house underneath the roof. The roof is the protecting medium for all the wood or concrete structure underlying. The roof is symbolic of the structure, and the magnificent but deceptive lights of astronomical observation and record are areas of a creative roof, which cannot be seen as a collective and continuous whole for the reasons explained here. Our terrestrial sky covers our room of the universe house in the same manner as every so-called star and planet covers the endless celestial rooms of the same house. Our sky, in common with all celestial sky, cannot be observed as a connected unit. It likewise presents to distant observers the identical pattern of varying luminosity and motion that we observe of the celestial sky. The astronomer expresses that factual skylight variation of the celestial roof as star magnitude, and that term is synonymous with skylight intensity. That causative activity, of which so little has been learned, performs other wonders implied by the late Dr. Robert Andrews Millikan's memorable announcement, quote, "Creative life force is at work throughout the entire universe," end quote. But the wonders of that force at work are not to be determined by abstract figures and symbols of figures. Goodness gracious. So that's end of chapter 6, you guys. I appreciate you sitting here with me while we do it. I'm thinking about maybe doing another stream tonight, although it is getting kind of late. But I was just gonna talk some flurfer stuff with y'all and see if y'all want to hang out. So I'm gonna see if I can stay up for maybe another hour. So let me end this. Let me do a little coffee break, and I'll probably pop back in here momentarily. So hopefully I'll see y'all very soon. Wow, what a crazy book this is, though, eh? I don't know, man. In the vertical, okay, Tasha, I'll try it. I did a vertical stream before, and I didn't notice much difference. But yeah, I can try it. It's just because I'm reading. I've got my laptop in front of me with the phone sitting on the laptop, and if it's in vertical, then it's like covers up too much of the screen. But if I'm not reading from the book, yeah, pretty crazy. All right, y'all. Well, much love. Links below if you want to contribute and try to help keep old brother off the street. And hopefully I'll be getting into the trailer soon. But I'll catch y'all up. I'm gonna do another stream here in a minute, so I'll see y'all here. Just give me about 15, 20 minutes, okay? One love, y'all. See you soon. Bye.